If you're at all aware of what's going on in the media, especially in the film media, you know that there is a new movie out, 2012, and an end time kind of Armageddon type film. There have been lots of these over the years. One of my favorites is When Worlds Collide, about a planet that's going to come and destroy the Earth, and they build a spaceship in Noah's Ark fashion to take people to a nearby planet that is hospitable to humans. So the movie 2012 is another type of apocalyptic movie that Hollywood has been doing for quite some time. The difference in this particular film is that it's based upon a premise that a lot of people believe is actually true, and that is in the year 2012, specifically in the late December of 2012, we will actually see a cataclysmic end of all things based upon the Mayan calendar. I've always been suspicious of the Mayan calendar since it was developed by a civilization that doesn't exist anymore. It's kind of humorous that people are putting faith in something, in a group of people who could not maintain their own civilization. It is rather humorous. Unfortunately, though, there are lots of people who are taking this Mayan calendar prophecy seriously. So now we have to live with 3 years of this nonsense. Now, we did something very similar in Christian circles, and I'm going to get specifically to some of this as well, because some of the biggest critics of the Mayan calendar 2012 apocalyptic extravaganza are people who have kind of set this up in the Christian world. Those who claim to decry end-time speculation engage in a lot of it themselves. And so their criticisms ring rather hollow. But you might recall in 1970 when Hal Lindsey wrote his book, The Late Great Planet Earth, that he made something of a prediction for that particular generation. He claimed, and others before him had done the same thing, that 1948 was the critical year. It was the year that Israel became a nation again. And a generation in Matthew chapter 24, verse 34, where it says, "This generation will not pass away until all these things take place," that a generation was 40 years, and you can do the simple math. 48 plus 40 gives you 1988. And so there was a great deal of speculation in the 1980s. Chuck Smith had done a sermon near the end of I think it was 1970 or 1979, 1980, leading up to what would have been in his mind the rapture of the church in 1981, 7 years before the end of that generation. And he talked about Halley's Comet and the debris that would come on Earth as a result of the tail of the comet, and went on and on with this. And so 1988 came and went without any significant change in the sky or the Earth. Things went on as normal. And the speculators were embarrassed for a little while until they wrote their next book, claiming that the year 2000 was going to be the end point of all of this. Supposedly this was based upon the premise that the Earth was created around 4000 BC, and so that would have been 4,000 years BC, and then up to the year 2000, actually the end of the year 2000, 2001, that was 2,000 years. So 4,000 plus 2,000 gives you 6,000. And the premise is that a day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is a day. 6 days is the work week, so 6,000 years would be essentially a working time for man on earth. And so the 6 days, literal work days, coincided, paralleled with the 6,000 years. And a day is 1,000 years, or 1,000 years is a day, so that 6,000 created this kind of millennial week. And then the seventh day would have been the millennium, the day of rest. And so this was a big deal in the year when the year 2001 came and went, again without any significant change in the way we lived our lives. So it doesn't surprise me that there are lots of people out there who are looking for any sort of end point And this 2012 date is important to them. And so now we're going to have to wait 3 years, like we had to do when Hal Lindsey did the late great Planet Earth in 1970. We had to wait 18 years to finally see that what he had to say was wrong. Of course, others had maintained he was going to be wrong anyway, because his exegesis on Matthew chapter 24, verse 34, and the use of this generation was way, way off base. The premise is that the budding of the fig tree in Matthew chapter 24, verse 32, told us when the start of that generation is. Of course, there's nothing in the New Testament that says anything about Israel becoming a nation again. The budding of the fig tree in Matthew chapter 24, 32 is not about Israel becoming a nation again. John Walvoord, a very prominent dispensational end-time advocate who died several years ago, I believe in 2000, well, I guess it was before the year 2000, said that the fig tree illustration is not Israel becoming a nation again. And Mark Hitchcock, who has written a book, 2012, The Bible and the End of the World, to his credit, maintains that the fig tree illustration, Matthew 24:32, has nothing to do with Israel. Even so, people like Mark Hitchcock and especially Tim LaHaye have been on the forefront of saying this is the generation. And we are living near the end of all of this stuff. So they conjure up a great deal of prophetic speculation. It only feeds this speculative atmosphere that we have today. They claim, though, that they want to use this 2012 to bring people back to a true rendering of Bible prophecy. But again, they've been they haven't been very accurate in their predictions as well. Let me give you a couple of examples of this in the couple of minutes I have left. When Tim LaHaye wrote a book in 1972 called The Beginning of the End, and this is what he said: carefully putting all this together, we now recognize this strategic generation. It is the generation that sees the four-part sign of verse 7 in Matthew 24, or the people who saw the First World War. So he wrote this book in 1972, and he says the beginning point of that end-time generation is the events surrounding World War I. But when that book was revised in 1991, he changed his view. Reading again, but this from the 1991 revised edition, carefully putting all this together, we now recognize this strategic generation. It is the generation that sees the events of 1948. So in the 1972 edition, he claims it was the World War I years. In the revised 1991 edition, he claims it's 1948 when Israel became a nation again. So please tell me why non-Christians are going to pay attention to somebody like Tim LaHaye who changed the goal line. And by the way, what's interesting about all of this, if you go back and read the 1991 revised edition, he never tells his reading audience why he changed from the World War I years to 1948, and what biblical justification that he gave for it. And of course, the answer simply is there is no reason. This is all speculation. So Christians have been creating these problems in the first place. They really are not respected by the general secular population because they have been making these predictions for so long. No one pays any attention to them anymore. It's like the boy who cried wolf. If some great eschatological event does take place, no one is going to be paying attention to any of these people. Their books sit on my shelf, full of promises, but yet with no fulfillment. If you want any real answers to this, I suggest you get my books, Last Days Madness and Is Jesus Coming Soon?